Chapter 2: Eden's Secret Battle, Love, Protection, and the Weight of Hidden Illness. Eden had always been the protector in our family. Even as a child, she was the one who stood between me and Chuck when our typical sibling conflicts got too heated. She was the one who made sure I had lunch money when I forgot it, who covered for me when I missed curfew, who somehow always knew when I needed someone to believe in me. So when I look back now, I realize that keeping her cancer diagnosis secret was perhaps the most Eden thing she could have done. She was protecting us the only way she knew how, by carrying the burden herself so that we didn't have to. But protection, I've learned, is complicated, and sometimes the very love that motivates it can create the deepest wounds, the discovery. 3 days after Eden's funeral, I was helping Mom clean out her apartment when I found the medical files. Stacks of them dating back 8 months, oncology appointments, treatment schedules, insurance correspondence, a paper trail of a battle we never knew was being fought. She was getting chemotherapy, Mom said, her voice barely a whisper as we sat on Eden's couch, surrounded by the evidence of her secret struggle. Twice a week, and she never told us. I picked up a treatment summary dated just 2 weeks before her death. The language was clinical, detached. Patient continues to respond poorly to current protocol. Recommend palliative care consultation. Reading those words, I felt something break inside me that I didn't know was still intact. She had known. For weeks, Eden had known she was dying, and she had chosen to face that knowledge alone. In leadership, we often talk about transparency as a core value. We advocate for open communication, honest feedback, and shared challenges. But what happens when someone you care about, someone you're responsible for, makes a unilateral decision to protect you from difficult truths? This was the question that haunted me in the weeks following the discovery of Eden's files. As a leader, I had always prided myself on creating environments where people felt safe sharing their struggles. But here was evidence that even in my own family, had felt compelled to carry their greatest challenge alone. The psychology of secrets reveals why this happens more often than we might think. Research by Dr. Michael Slepian at Columbia University shows that we keep secrets not primarily to protect ourselves, but to protect others from emotional harm. The secret keeper bears the psychological burden because they believe sharing would cause greater damage to relationships and loved ones. Eden kept her diagnosis secret because she couldn't bear the thought of us suffering alongside her. In her mind, she was being loving. But the cost of that love was enormous for her and for us. The isolation of leadership. As I processed Eden's choice, I began to recognize a pattern in my own leadership style that made me deeply uncomfortable. How many times had I carried information, concerns, or struggles alone because I believed sharing them would burden or worry my team? How often had I made decisions about what others needed to know based on my own assessment of what they could handle? There's something seductive about being the person who carries the weight. It feels noble, protective, even heroic. But I was beginning to understand that this kind of leadership by protection, often robs others of their agency, their opportunity to contribute, their chance to show strength. Eden's battle forced me to confront a difficult truth. Sometimes our desire to protect others is really about our own need to feel strong, necessary, indispensable. We tell ourselves we're shielding them from pain, but we're also shielding them from the opportunity to support us, to grow through difficulty, to be needed in return. The science of stress and secrecy. When we carry secrets, especially significant ones about health or mortality, our bodies pay a price. The autonomic nervous system, which regulates heart rate, blood pressure, and immune function, remains in a state of chronic activation. Cortisol levels stay elevated, inflammation increases, and the body's ability to heal is compromised. Dr. James Pennebaker's research at the University of Texas has shown that the act of not talking about traumatic experiences can be as damaging as the trauma itself. When we hold difficult information inside, our brains must constantly work to suppress the natural urge to share, communicate, and seek support. This suppression requires enormous mental energy, and creates ongoing physiological stress. Looking at Eden's medical records, I could see evidence of this stress in her declining health markers. Her blood pressure had spiked after her diagnosis. Her weight had dropped more rapidly than the cancer alone would explain. Her immune system markers showed signs of chronic stress that likely made her less able to fight the disease. Eden's body had paid the price for her heart's desire to protect us. One of the cruelest aspects of losing someone who kept their struggle secret is the guilt that follows. As I sat in Eden's apartment, surrounded by evidence of appointments I could have driven her to, treatments I could have supported her through, fears I could have helped her carry, I was overwhelmed by a sense of failure so profound it felt physical. I should have known. As someone who prided himself on being observant and emotionally intelligent, I should have seen the signs. The weight loss I attributed to stress, the fatigue she blamed on work, all of it was there, but I had missed it. This guilt became one of my greatest teachers about the nature of responsibility in relationships. We cannot know what others choose not to share. We cannot save people who are determined to protect us from their pain. And we cannot lead effectively when we're carrying the weight of omniscience, the impossible burden of believing we should always know what we don't know. Eden's secret changed how I approach leadership conversations. Instead of waiting for people to share their struggles, I began actively creating space for them. Instead of assuming that absence of complaint meant absence of challenge, I started asking different questions. What are you carrying that you haven't shared? Where are you trying to protect others from difficulty? What would support look like if you were willing to receive it? These questions felt awkward at first. They required me to model a level of vulnerability I wasn't comfortable with. But they created openings for conversations that changed everything, not just for my team, but for my own understanding of what leadership really means. True leadership, I was learning, isn't about being the strongest person in the room. It's about creating space for others to be honest about their weakness, their fear, their need for support. It's about building cultures where secrets are less necessary because sharing is safe. Eden's secret didn't just affect her, it changed our entire family dynamic in ways we're still discovering. When someone dies and you learn they were struggling without your knowledge, it creates a hypervigilance in relationships that can be both helpful and exhausting. Now I notice when people seem tired. I pay attention to changes in communication patterns. I ask follow-up questions when someone says they're fine. This heightened awareness has made me a more attentive friend, colleague, and leader, but it's also created anxiety about what I might still be missing. In my work with sales teams, I've seen how this dynamic plays out professionally. High performers who appear to be thriving suddenly burn out because they've been carrying stress they didn't feel safe sharing. The cost of secrets in organizations is enormous, not just in terms of productivity and retention, but in terms of trust and psychological safety. When people feel they must hide their struggles, everyone suffers. Eden's approach to her illness was rooted in a definition of strength that our culture often promotes, the ability to endure difficulty without burdening others. She was strong in the way we're taught to be strong, independent, stoic, self-reliant. But her death taught me that this kind of strength can be its own form of weakness. When we're so determined to be strong that we can't ask for help, we're not protecting others. We're depriving them of the opportunity to love us fully. We're robbing relationships of the depth that comes from mutual support and shared burden. Real strength, I've come to believe, includes the courage to be vulnerable. It includes the wisdom to know when independence becomes isolation. It includes the understanding that allowing others to support us is not a sign of weakness, but a gift we give to them. The gift of being needed, of being trusted with difficulty, of being included in the full reality of our lives. The leadership lesson hidden in loss. If Eden had lived, I'm not sure I would have learned what her death taught me about the relationship between protection and connection. Her secret battle revealed something crucial about leadership that I had never understood. The desire to shield others from difficulty often comes from love, but it can create the very disconnection we're trying to prevent. When leaders carry information, concerns, or struggles alone, They create distance in the relationships they're trying to protect. They make decisions about what others can handle without giving them the chance to prove their strength. They solve problems that could have been opportunities for team building, trust development, and shared growth. This doesn't mean leaders should dump every concern on their teams or eliminate all boundaries around difficult information. But it does mean creating systems and cultures where people feel safe sharing struggles before they become crises, where asking for help is seen as wisdom rather than weakness. Following Eden's death, I began experimenting with different approaches to team leadership that prioritize connection over protection. I started sharing my own struggles more openly, not in ways that burdened my team, but in ways that modeled vulnerability and normalized the reality that everyone faces challenges. I implemented regular check-ins that went beyond work performance to include personal well-being. Most importantly, I began rewarding people for asking for help, rather than only recognizing those who appeared to need no support. The results were remarkable. Team members began sharing struggles earlier, before they became overwhelming. Collaboration increased as people felt more comfortable admitting what they didn't know. Innovation improved because people felt safe taking risks and potentially failing. Most surprisingly, productivity increased. When people don't have to expend energy hiding their difficulties, they have more capacity for their actual work. When they feel supported rather than judged, they're more likely to take on challenging projects and stretch assignments. The paradox of protection. Eden's story illustrates a fundamental paradox of human relationships. Sometimes the very actions we take to protect the people we love end up hurting them more than the truth would have. Her secret battle was motivated by pure love. She couldn't bear the thought of us suffering alongside her. But by keeping her diagnosis hidden, she robbed us of the opportunity to support her, to show our love in action, to be part of her journey rather than just witnesses to its end. This paradox plays out in leadership contexts constantly. Managers who don't share information about company challenges to avoid panic often create more anxiety than transparency would have. Leaders who take on extra work to protect their teams from stress often burn out and end up less available when support is really needed. The solution isn't to eliminate all protection or share every difficulty indiscriminately. It's to recognize that adults, whether family members or team members, are generally more capable of handling truth than we give them credit for. It's to understand that excluding people from challenges often hurts more than including them in solutions. Key takeaways from Chapter 2. Protection can create disconnection. Well-intentioned efforts to shield others from difficulty rob relationships of depth and mutual support. 2. Secrets carry physiological costs. Keeping significant struggles hidden creates chronic stress that impacts both mental and physical health. 3. Adults are more capable than we think. People can generally handle more truth than we give them credit for, and excluding them from challenges often hurts more than including them in solutions. 4. Being needed is a gift. Allowing others to support us offers them the opportunity to express care and feel useful in meaningful ways. 5. Vulnerability strengthens leadership. Leaders who model appropriate vulnerability create cultures where others feel safe sharing struggles and asking for help. Action steps. 1. Assess your protection patterns. Where are you carrying information or struggles alone to protect others? What might happen if you shared more appropriately? 2. Create space for sharing. Implement regular check-ins that go beyond work performance to include personal well-being and challenges. 3. Model vulnerability. Share an appropriate struggle or learning opportunity with your team to normalize the reality that everyone faces challenges. 4. Reward help-seeking. Explicitly recognize and appreciate team members who ask for support rather than only celebrating those who appear to need none. 5. Practice receiving support. Identify one area where you could use help and ask for it, giving someone else the gift of being needed. Reflection questions. Where are you trying to protect others from difficulties that might actually strengthen them? What secrets are you keeping that might be creating distance in your relationships? How comfortable are you with being needed versus always being the one who helps others?